The Young and the Restless Spoilers. In the chaos that had unfolded in Genoa City, where secrets were always lurking just beneath the surface, Elena Dawson had been an enigma, a character whose presence had been conspicuously absent for too long. For months, she had remained silent, hiding in the shadows as the storm of lies and betrayal consumed everyone she had once held close. But now, in the heart of Nice, where the city's sun-kissed streets had been a far cry from the darkness that was about to descend, Elena's return would be the spark that ignited a firestorm. She had stayed away for a reason, but that reason was no longer enough to keep her silent. The truth had to come out. Elena's silence had always been shrouded in mystery. For those who didn't know her story, it was easy to dismiss her absence as merely a passing phase. But those who knew Elena understood the weight of the decisions she had been forced to make, decisions that had left her deeply scarred, both emotionally and psychologically. The truth about Claire's true parentage was a secret that Elena had carried with her like a burden, one that she had once been too afraid to expose. But now, with everything that had transpired, the lies, the manipulations, and the mounting betrayals, Elena could no longer stand by and let Claire's web of deceit consume those she loved. The time had come for Elena to return and reveal the shocking truth. For months, Claire had been parading around Genoa City, convinced that her lies were beyond reproach. She had declared herself to be Victoria Newman's daughter, flaunting a DNA test that had supposedly confirmed her heritage, a test that had been conveniently presented at a time when Jordan had still been alive. No one had questioned her then. After all, Claire had the proof, and no one suspected that the results were anything more than what they appeared to be. But in the shadows, Elena had always known the truth. Claire was not Victoria's daughter. She was a liar, a fraud who had been willing to do anything to secure her place in the Newman family. But Elena had also known something else, something that Claire had never anticipated. The death of Jordan had changed everything. While he had been alive, Jordan had been the puppet master pulling the strings, the one who had orchestrated the entire plan to manipulate the DNA results. It was Jordan who had forced Elena to change the test results, to falsify the evidence that had made Claire a legitimate Newman in the eyes of the world. He had held a gun to Elena's head, threatening her life if she didn't comply. Elena had been terrified, paralyzed by fear, and had done as she was told. But now that Jordan was dead, there was no longer any reason to keep quiet. Claire's lies had gone on long enough, and it was time to expose her for the fraud she truly was. Elena's arrival in Nice was the catalyst for everything that would come next. She had been staying in the city for weeks, quietly observing as the drama around her intensified. When she saw Claire, the woman who had once been her ally, now fully ensnared in her own web of lies, Elena knew it was time to act. Claire had been pretending to be untouchable, but Elena could see the cracks in her facade. The more Claire manipulated, the more Elena realized that her return was inevitable. She had to do this, not just for herself, but for everyone Claire had hurt along the way. When Elena confronted Claire in Nice, the tension in the air was palpable. Claire had always been a master of deception, but even she couldn't hide her fear when she saw Elena standing before her. For the first time, Claire realized that her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. Elena's eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now burned with the clarity of someone who had finally made peace with the truth. And the truth she held was devastating. With cold precision, Elena revealed everything. She exposed the twisted relationship between Jordan and Claire, the manipulation, the lies, and the falsified DNA test that had convinced everyone, even Victoria, that Claire was her daughter. But it didn't stop there. Elena went on to reveal the darkest secret of all. Jordan had not just pressured her to change the DNA results, he had threatened her life to ensure her compliance. The gun he had held to her head, the fear that had paralyzed her, was all part of his sick plan to make sure Claire's place in the Newman family was secure. Elena had done what she had to do to survive, but now, in the wake of Jordan's death, there was nothing left to stop her from telling the world the truth. Claire's face, once so confident, twisted into something unrecognizable as the weight of Elena's words sank in. For the first time, Claire's carefully crafted persona cracked, revealing the vulnerable, scared woman underneath. She had built her life on a lie, and now, with Elena's revelations, that lie was coming to an end. The confrontation in Nice was only the beginning. The aftermath of Elena's exposure would send shockwaves through the lives of everyone involved. Victoria Newman, who had been so sure of Claire's legitimacy, was shattered. The woman she had welcomed into her family as a daughter was nothing more than a fraud. The betrayal stung deeply, but Victoria's heartbreak would soon turn to fury as she realized just how far Claire had gone to manipulate not just her, but the entire Newman family. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from Jack Abbott. He had trusted Claire, had welcomed her into his life, believing that she was the answer to all the wrongs of the past. Now, as the truth came crashing down, Jack was forced to confront the fact that he had been duped, and worse, that the woman he had once cared for had played him like a fool. The fallout would be catastrophic, and Jack knew that nothing could ever undo the damage Claire had caused. But even as the truth came to light, one question remained: what would Claire do now? She was backed into a corner, with no one left to support her. Her lies had caught up with her, and now she was facing the consequences of her actions. Would she try to escape, running from the destruction she had caused, or would she attempt to salvage what was left of her life by manipulating those around her one last time? For Elena, the journey had come full circle. She had been the one who had suffered in silence, the one who had been forced to cover up Claire's lies to protect her own life. But now, she had exposed the truth, and in doing so, had regained control of her own destiny. No longer would she be the victim of Claire's machinations. No longer would she allow herself to be manipulated by fear. Elena had taken back her power, and with it, had dismantled the lies that had held Genoa City in its grip for far too long. As the dust settled, the question remained: could the Abbotts and the Newmans ever forgive Claire for the pain she had caused? Could they rebuild the trust that had been shattered, or would the betrayal be too much to overcome? One thing was certain: Elena's revelation had changed everything. Genoa City would never be the same again, and neither would the people who had been caught in Claire's web of lies. And as for Claire, the consequences of her actions had only just begun. Whether she chose to run, fight, or face the music, the truth had finally caught up with her, and there was no escaping it now. As the truth about Claire's deception and her fraudulent claim to being Victoria Newman's daughter spread like wildfire, Claire found herself on the brink of complete destruction. The carefully constructed life she had built was unraveling before her eyes. The public exposure of her lies was only the beginning. In Nice, where she had once felt safe from the chaos of Genoa City, the walls were closing in faster than she could react. Fear gripped her as the weight of Elena's revelations bore down upon her, and it was then that Claire realized just how much power her former ally, Elena, now held over her fate. Frantically, Claire dialed Holden's number, her hands trembling as she waited for the connection. Her thoughts raced: she couldn't let this happen. She couldn't let Elena expose her for good. The truth was already out there, but it wasn't enough to undo everything she had worked for. If she didn't act now, if she didn't do something drastic, her entire world would come crashing down. Holden's voice, calm and measured, answered on the other end of the line. "Holden, you have to do this." Claire's voice was barely above a whisper, filled with panic. "Elena is a threat, and she's already told Victor everything. She's going to ruin everything we've built. You need to get rid of her. Do whatever it takes, just make sure she doesn't make it back to Genoa City. She can't live to tell this story." Holden paused on the other end, the silence pressing in on Claire like a vice. He had always been a man of action, but this request, this ultimatum, was different. Killing Elena was a step into darkness that he wasn't sure he could take, no matter how deep his loyalty to Claire ran. He had helped her once, back when everything had seemed so much simpler. But this? This was murder. This was something that would change them both forever. "You don't understand," Holden finally replied, his voice betraying an underlying tension. "We've been through this before, Claire. We can't just silence people like that. There has to be another way." But Claire wouldn't listen. In her mind, there was no other way. She had been pushed into a corner by Elena's return and the damning truths she had exposed. There was no escape, no room for negotiation. If she didn't act now, if she didn't take control of the narrative, she would lose everything. And losing everything wasn't an option. Not after all she had sacrificed, not after all she had done to carve out a place for herself among the powerful families of Genoa City. Holden, please. I'm begging you. You owe me this. Do it for me. For us. Holden hesitated again, but this time, his resolve faltered. He knew what was at stake. He had seen the consequences of failure too many times before. Still, a nagging sense of guilt pulled at him. Could he truly go through with it? Could he really end Elena's life just to protect Claire's fragile position? It wasn't just Claire's fate at risk anymore. It was his own soul. In the meantime, Elena, who had just disclosed the full truth to Victor about the conspiracy surrounding Claire, was not as alone as she thought. Victor had been her ally for a long time, and despite their complicated history, he was now standing firmly by her side. He had listened carefully as Elena explained everything, the threats, the manipulation, the forced falsification of the DNA test. Victor had always seen through people's facades, and in Elena's case, he saw someone who was willing to do whatever it took to expose the truth. After their conversation, Elena made her move. She called Victor again, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. Victor, I've spoken to Claire. I've told her everything. She's terrified now. But there's something else. I'm in danger, and I need your protection. There's more to this than just Claire's lies. She has allies, people who will stop at nothing to protect her. Victor, ever the calculating strategist, didn't hesitate. Elena, don't worry. You're under my protection now. No one is going to hurt you. I'll make sure of it. Stay where you are. I'll send someone to watch over you until I can get to you myself. But even as Victor promised to protect Elena, Claire's panic deepened. She could no longer rely on Holden to do her bidding, nor could she trust that her position was secure. With Elena now in a position of power, with the truth of Claire's identity about to become public knowledge, Claire knew her world would never be the same again. As she paced nervously in her hotel room, Claire's mind raced. The weight of Elena's presence in Nice, her proximity to the truth, and the looming threat of exposure was almost too much to bear. She had been the one pulling the strings for so long, manipulating people to her advantage, but now the tables had turned. For the first time, Claire wasn't in control. She wasn't the one with the upper hand. The question of whether Elena could actually go through with her revelations was no longer one Claire could ignore. And then, just as the panic reached its peak, Claire saw her worst fear materialize before her. Elena appeared, standing outside the door of the hotel room. Her silhouette was cast in the dim light of the hallway, her posture determined and unwavering. Claire's heart skipped a beat. This was it. There was no going back now. Elena had come to confront her, to expose her for everything she was, and Claire had no more lies left to tell. Elena's voice, calm and clear, broke the silence between them. It's over, Claire. I've told Victor everything, and now the world will know the truth. You're not Victoria's daughter. You've been lying all along, using people to get what you want. And now, the truth is out. Claire's eyes widened in horror. The truth was finally coming out. The walls that had shielded her from the consequences of her actions were crumbling. The life she had carefully constructed was about to collapse. She tried to stay calm, to regain control, but the reality of the situation was overwhelming. Her world was slipping through her fingers. No, you don't understand, Claire stammered, trying to gather herself. You can't do this. You can't destroy everything I've worked for. I did this for a reason. For us. Elena's expression softened, but there was no mercy in her eyes. There is no us, Claire. There never was. You lied to everyone, to your family, to Victor, to me. And now you'll have to face the consequences. At that moment, Claire realized the depth of her mistake. She had underestimated Elena, thought she could control her. But now, Elena had exposed her for who she truly was, a liar, a fraud, a woman willing to destroy others for her own gain. In that same moment, as Claire stood there, trying to come up with a way to escape the consequences of her actions, she felt a shiver run down her spine. It was then that she realized something else: the danger wasn't over. Elena might have exposed her lies, but there were still people out there who would stop at nothing to protect her. And that fear only grew as she thought about the lengths Claire might have to go to in order to save herself. Would she run? Would she fight back? But Elena was already one step ahead. You can't run from this, Claire. The truth is already in motion. The pieces are falling into place, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Claire took a step back, her mind spinning with panic and regret. There was no escape. Elena's presence, her unshakable resolve, was the final blow. The truth about Claire's deceit, her lies, her betrayal, was finally being exposed. And for Claire, there was no going back. As the sun set over Nice, a new chapter began. The truth had surfaced, and it was clear that no one, not even Claire, could control its consequences. For Elena, this was the beginning of her redemption. For Claire, it was the end of everything she had built. The final act had arrived, and the curtain was about to fall.